Hi, I'm Tisbury Pringle-Ennis. Welcome to my studio here in West Seattle. I'm a flamework glass artist and I make sculpture, jewelry, and whimsical ornaments made using a technique called flameworking. I take colored glass and melt it over a torch flame over 2,000 degrees. I got started in the mid-90s in California when I went to art school, and I moved up to Seattle to pursue my career and work for several different artists before I opened my own studio and started my own booth at Pike Place Market in 2002. So you can find all my work at Pike Place Market and online every week. And today I'm going to be making this little octopus during a demonstration to show you exactly how I make it. So there's a lot that goes into making a piece. First I start with glass rods. I start with clear glass that I melt down, and I add different colors depending on which palette I want to add. Today I'll be working with ruby red color. This glass is Pyrex glass. It's actually melts at a very high temperature, and it's quite a bit more durable than regular glass. So it's great for sculpture, jewelry, wearable art. One of my inspirations for working with glass and the subject matter is sea creatures. I actually grew up on a boat for the first 5 years of my life, and I've always lived by the water. So for me, it was a very natural progression to be inspired by the sea, and I think glass really lends well to sea life, and so I've been making glass sea creatures and wearable art for almost 20 years. So now I'd like to show you some other ways, other tools and different ways that I make the glass. So here we've got my torch, and it's got oxygen and propane gas, and that's how I actually melt the glass. I start with solid rods here, and I've got a whole bunch of different tools. I've got tweezers, scissors, this is a little paddle, shapers, all sorts of different tools that I use to shape the glass while it's molten hot. These are the glasses I use because the torch flame is very, very hot, and so you always want to protect yourself, protect your eyes. So I always wear those. And I protect myself using sleeves. And I also put sunblock actually on my face to protect my skin because the UV rays are so hot that you can actually get a sunburn. So yeah, lots of fire, lots of exciting things. So let's get started on making a piece. I'll show you how I make that little big red octopus. All right, now I'm going to start making my octopus. So we turn on the torch. I've got an inner flame and an outer flame here. So my inner flame is smaller, and then my outer flame, which I control with the foot pedal, is quite a bit larger. So I switch back and forth depending on how hot I want the glass to get. So I'm going to start with a clear rod of glass in about 20 millimeters, about 1.5 inches thickness. We start melting it. You really gotta get it real hot initially. And I'm always turning it because I want it to heat evenly, and I don't want it to droop down if it gets too hot. So I'm thinking about gravity and trying to heat it evenly before I apply some color. The glass actually needs to be hot before you add the color to it, otherwise it will not stick. And there's always a risk of it cracking pretty much the entire time you're working on it. So if a piece gets too cold, it will crack, which means that the piece is lost. Sometimes you can salvage it, but it is very difficult. So, really thinking about a lot of different things when I'm working the color and the glass together. Okay, so that is preheated enough. So I'm going to add colored glass on top. It's my ruby red. So with this design, I'm just going to slowly make some strips, and then I'm going to twist it together to create kind of a swirl design. Didn't quite get that hot enough, so go back in, make sure it's hot enough that it will twist. See, I've twisted the color on there. This color is ruby red, and when it's hot, it actually goes clear until it gets heated to a certain temperature, and then it'll turn to red. And it's called a striking color, so it'll change color depending how hot it gets, and depending on the flame temperature. So right now I'm just melting in. I'm actually working on shaping the head of the octopus. So with this Pyrex, you gotta get it a little bit hotter than regular soda lime glass. It's a stronger type of glass, but it heats at a slower rate. So you really have to heat it a lot more. And I'm just kind of trying to shape it. Here I am using gravity as well to shape this. So I'm holding it down slightly and trying to amass a piece further up so that it looks more like an octopus head. Spending a little more time getting the head properly shaped. Now, I'm going to add another piece of glass to the top to access it from a different angle. Now that I've connected the top, I'm actually going to flatten the bottom. I'm going to wipe it down a little bit here and make the body. part can take a little while. Just takes a while to heat it and get it shaped. So I'm taking this piece down smaller. Now I will flatten the bottom. You really want to be very precise with your turning and your heat so that you're efficient with actually melting it in the right way. If you don't spend your time working on the right spot, it's not going to melt properly. So I'm always trying to get that edge to melt so it'll be able to be shaped. Slowly melting it down. Okay, now that it's shaped, generally, I'm going to come over to the kiln and I'm going to get a piece of glass out of the kiln to add to the bottom. That is called dichroic sheet glass, and it's a sparkly glass that will add a metallic-y sparkle to the bottom, which really adds to the magic of this design. I'm slowly heating a small piece of glass, heating the bottom. I'm going to come over to the kiln. Got my sheet glass here. I'm actually going to slowly heat up. And when it's hot enough, I will stick it to the bottom. Now I've got to melt it on slowly. You don't want to heat it too much, otherwise it will burn out. The metals in the glass will burn out on the dichroic. So slowly heating it. Then I'll add a color on the background. Sure the sheet glass is on there properly before I add a color on the background. I'm just kind of pushing it on with the paddle so it gets evenly dispersed throughout. Okay, now I'm going to add a color to the background. It's another ruby red. So with this design, several layers of colors. Just trying to fill in all the color on the background so that it's a solid red glass behind the deck front. Now that all the color is on, I'm actually going to cut the octopus legs out with special scissors. So I'm heating one section on both sides, from the front and the back. When it's hot, I go in and I make a cut. Always got to count. Last time I did 9 legs, so make sure there's 8 legs. There's 4 more to go. On my legs. Now it's time to put the eyeballs on. This is a layering of glass in the shape of an eye. What I'm going to do is basically, it's called stamping. So we're just going to heat the top of the layers and heat a small section on the octopus. And then push it in and it'll make just a little bit of glass will come off and it'll make the image of an eye. A little clear glass over the top. And just get rid of this here. When you put clear glass over the eye cane, it will magnify it, so it'll look more like a eyeball. Now I'm going to pull the legs out one by one. Constantly assessing the heat to see how hot it is, whether it will be hot enough for you to move and shape it the way you want to. Now I'm adding the little suckers on the bottom, the tentacle. So a different color for those. Heat up the leg and then use my little tweezers to shape it. And with this technique, I really want to do targeted heat. So I'm constantly targeting specific areas that I want to get hot. And other areas I really don't want to get too hot because I don't want it to move since I've already shaped it. So if I've already shaped a leg, I don't want to get the last leg I shaped too hot because it'll move. I'm just heating. Make sure that it's hot enough to shape. Going in with the small flame to really target the heat. Stretch this one out just a tiny bit more. This is one of my favorite little tools. I get in there with the little wedge. Really targeting the heat here. Make sure that I'm not heating other things that will move. Cut this again. Sometimes it gets melted back together, so I'm gonna make sure they're separated. You can pull it out. Now people do octopus different ways. Some people add the legs. Some people, make each leg individually and then add them. I just make it all off one piece. So it's just the technique I do. go up a little bit. Have it come down like that. Two more to go. Now I'm going to heat the whole piece up and shape it so it sits flat. And there's a risk this will crack, so I'm always taking precautions when I get to this stage. Normally I would preheat it in the kiln halfway through, but for demonstration purposes I'm just making it all at once. Doing a general heat. I want to get everything hot so that it will sit flat. Make it tilt back just a slight bit and heat the neck area. This is the part where you can shape it to be the shape we want, the general look. I think that looks cool. So now I take it off. The punty is this typically called the punty. It's the piece that holds the piece together. You can access it at a different angle. I'm just going to shape the head and then I'm going to put it in the kiln and it will be done. shape the head a little bit so it's not a cone head octopus. Get it kind of flatten out. It's good to me. In it goes. And that's how it's done.